Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another live stream. And it is World Cup heartache for England. Going home on the next plane, France 2, England 1. And Harry Kane missing a crucial penalty with about 5 or 6 minutes to go to bring us level and potentially put us into extra time. But ultimately for England, it's a familiar situation, you know, played well for large parts of the game. I mean, not a clear second best of France at all, fairly even, but as we've seen so often in these big tournaments, in the major moments, we always fall short. And it's the same as happened again tonight. I think there's a lot to be proud of, but there's also got to be an acceptance for me that in reality, we aren't, despite the players we've got, we aren't good enough to win a tournament right now. And it's as simple as that for me. There are a lot of things that went well tonight. There's a lot to be proud of over this tournament. I've been critical of Gareth Southgate in the past, but I have to say tonight and this tournament, I don't think he's got anything wrong. I mean, bar from the US game where I felt the subs were quite poor. Other than that, I actually don't think he's got anything wrong. He can hold his head high, but ultimately, when it comes down to the spot kicks, anyone can miss. But for me, as a professional footballer, it's inexcusable to not hit the target. I know it's big. I know it's big pressure, and I know there's a lot going on, and there's you cannot imagine the pressure going through Harry Kane's mind there. But at the same time, as a professional, you have to make the keeper make a save. You have to make the keeper work. And ultimately, I really didn't expect him to miss that. And that's I'm not saying that's cost England the win, but it's cost England the opportunity to go and fight for that win. But as always, delighted to be joined by Oli. Mate, thanks for coming on. It's a pleasure. We're kind of used to talking about disappointing circumstances with how Chelsea's season's gone so far, but it's England for a change. How are you feeling, mate? Because it was a game that I didn't think it was the greatest of games. It kind of opened up a bit more in the second half, but I don't know. I didn't think there was, for all the quality on the pitch, it wasn't really a game of that high quality, in my opinion.
It was quite a cagey game for a lot of it, and it was one of those sort of strange cagey game where there were still a lot of chances. It wasn't just being sort of knocked around in the middle a lot. I thought England probably didn't deserve to go through. I thought we played well. I think they can be proud of their performance. A lot of the players, I think when you're playing at such a high level against a team like France, who are the world champions, little things are going to make a big difference. And things like Kane missing a penalty, which is a big thing that makes a big difference. But a few things I wasn't quite so happy with. I don't really understand why we bothered taking off Saka.
Yeah, I agree. He's our most dangerous player.
Arguably our most dangerous player. So I think Southgate did get that one wrong. And I think when Sterling came on that right hand side for him, I don't really think he offered all that much. So it almost gave the French a bit of a reprieve, because up until that point, Saka was really sort of torching Hernandez down that left hand side and doing a really good job of it as well. I don't know. It's one of those where, you got to look at it objectively. I think it's you're playing against the team who are now, other than maybe Argentina, the most likely to win it now. And I think ultimately decent performance, didn't really deserve to go through, didn't do anything spectacular. And the other thing as well is, I hate to say it because I feel like it's a little bit of a cliche, especially coming from a couple Chelsea boys like us. But you can take the man out of Tottenham in terms of Harry Kane, and I'm not trying to say that Kane's necessarily
it was Spursy.
It was Spursy. That's the thing, and the thing is Harry Kane has proven at club level, at every opportunity, at the biggest time, in the biggest moments, on the biggest stage, that he just freezes. And we saw it again today.
Well, he missed that one in the Euro semi-final against Denmark in the Euros, but he got the rebound luckily that time. But
so it goes to show, that ultimately club form actually does make a big difference with some of these tournaments sometimes. And as much as and even individual player accolades in terms of trophies won and things like that can be quite important, because knowing what it's like to win for a lot of the players will, help instill that winning mentality, because the national team don't have it, because we haven't won a tournament in forever. We've gotten close recently and we're doing really well and doing a lot better than we used to be. But I think ultimately, if you really want to be, I personally wouldn't give the captain talisman sort of the captain talisman sort of trope to someone who hasn't actually won anything in his career, because in that way you can sort of see it almost as the blind leading the blind. I'm not blaming Kane because I think he still had a good tournament, but I just think maybe someone I would be more tempted to give the captaincy to someone like Kyle Walker. Maybe even Jordan Henderson, someone who's actually got that experience of winning. I'm just not convinced. Even though Kane is the goal scorer and is the striker, I'm not sure he's got the ability to lead and instill that same winning mentality because he doesn't experience it at club level.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it makes a difference that we've got a manager that's never won anything as well? I mean,
you can say the same, and even in the manager's playing career,
and
what
he's
he
not
did,
really won anything as a player either. He's been
well,
there.
You can say he missed a penalty in England
1996. Yeah.
Does it play a part?
Does that
if you go back that far, maybe
don't
not.
know.
But,
yeah. But I think it's a fair point. If you're looking to the bench and and this has always been my thing with Southgate. I think there's no denying that he's done a fantastic job for England. We've done these last 3 tournaments have been 3 of our best tournaments in God knows how many years. There's a real belief amongst the England camp again. Players actually look forward to going to international duty.
Because the team actually like each other as well, which is really important.
And the country's kind of back invested in international football. I've got to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of international football, but I've got a bit more into it.
Definitely the last 2-3 tournaments. I've gotten far more into it than I was,
and that's a credit to him. He's done that, but ultimately for me, when it's the going gets tough, and you're in big moments in big games like quarterfinals,
you need someone to step up.
I look to the sideline. I've got Southgate there. No disrespect. I'm not saying if we had Thomas Tuchel on the sideline, for example, tonight, that England would have won. But I'd feel a far higher level of confidence looking to him on the touchline than I would looking to Southgate on the touchline. I think ultimately, despite how well he's done, he's not. International football suits him because let's be honest, he becomes available tomorrow. No top Premier League clubs going for him. That's not a disrespect to him. That's just a fact.
Someone maybe in the relegation places would take a punt on him, or someone in the Championship quite easily. He was at Middlesbrough before, wasn't he? So
yeah,
but I do agree, and I think he falls into that kind of category of manager where he's an excellent man manager, but actually in the game he's not quite so skilled. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially for an international setup, because you need everyone to, be in good spirits. You need everyone to be getting onto a good man manager is actually really important. We've got lots of managers in the World Cup who are better in terms of tactics, but haven't really been able to keep the dressing room together as well. You could argue someone like Roberto Martinez with Belgium, for example. They had a lot of problems in their camp in terms of, personally. And then you've got other teams, Croatia may be a good example where everyone clearly really gets on and they're behind a manager who maybe isn't the most skilled in terms of his accolades, but he makes a big difference. And I would put Southgate in that second category. What England, I think, really need is, in terms of a coach, if this is in fact Southgate's last tournament for England, I think he needs... I think England needs someone a bit more cutthroat to actually be able to mould in and tactical to mould the players in game.
I mean, I think for me,
I'm just not sure it was working.
Yeah, for me, why Grealish doesn't come on instead of Sterling is baffling. Just in terms of the fact that Sterling
only turned up yesterday.
Yeah, Sterling. He's been home to deal with a robbery in his house, and then he's been on 2 long haul flights in the space of a few
his head's
days.
Not going to be in the game.
He's had one training session, and then
it doesn't matter what he says.
Yeah, and then he's suddenly first choice off the bench ahead of a Rashford, ahead of a Grealish.
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
That was a poor choice in
to
my
take
opinion.
Saka off at all was a mess, but to do it for that is almost like the worst thing you could have done, really.
Yeah,
like it or not, Sterling, as professional as he is, as we all know, brilliant guy, absolutely fantastic professional. But if that happens to anybody, any player, your head's not going to be in the game.
No,
we know this. We know this. This sort of thing has, it does tend to have an impact on players, and they need to go home and look after their families and not have anything preying on their minds, especially when when it comes to something like this. I don't know. Personally, I think Southgate certainly does still have his favourites. I think the likes of James Maddison as well probably should have featured throughout the whole World Cup more than he did,
Mate,
which
I'm
I don't know if
convinced
even if he did at all.
mate, the only reason he picked Madison was to avoid the onslaught for not picking him. He was never going to use him in this tournament. I think
It
it's so
seems not.
clear.
Yeah, it
But do you know
seems
what?
not with the way we were playing.
But tonight was a perfect example of what something that James Maddison could have done. Because you look what Griezmann, particularly in the first half, was doing for France, where he plays kind of as that 10, but he also drops in to make a third man in the midfield, and the pockets of space that Griezmann was picking up. And in that first half, he was causing a lot of problems. Maddison can do something very similar to that. I even think Phil Foden can probably do something like that as well. And I'm not sure. I know this is all hindsight and it's all great on reflection to say these things, but it's kind of the things that I think managers with a bit more bollocks, a bit more kind of tactical nous and know-how probably would have tried these things. Because as you know, England's, I've got no complaints about the starting lineup tonight, but
yeah,
and despite the strength and depth we've got within the squad, you know exactly what England are going to do. You know that's going to be the starting lineup, and you know that Rashford and Grealish plus someone and Mount are going to come off the bench.
Yeah,
it's very predictable. You know what's going to happen. I just think
that's not necessarily a bad thing if you've got a game
not.
plan that works. Like the Netherlands comes to mind with the sort of the way they like to play as well. Of course, they're out too, though.
But but for example, sorry, mate, just like you would never see England, in my opinion, you would never see Southgate do what Van Gaal did. I'm not saying we've got two big men to chuck on, but chuck on two big lads and lump it into the box.
There's not that tactical flexibility.
No, it's very rigid.
And I think it is still worth saying that Southgate's done really has done a lot of good for the England camp. He's done an excellent job over the last few tournaments, really guiding a talented setup of quite young, hungry players into better positions in the tournaments. Whether you win or not, it's the ultimate thing at the end, and we haven't. But he's done a very good job in getting us as far as we have. I do think now, he's brought the England squad together, and we're very, very grateful for that. And he was very good at it. And I think now it's time for the players to run with that and hold that on their own. And I think it's time to maybe get in a manager who, can really motivate the players and get the most out of them, because I'm not sure the nice guy version of Southgate is capable of winning a major tournament with England.
I don't think he is. I really don't think he is. I just think
we've only come within a spot kick, but I think, if you look at the Euros, but I think
that again was very
I've got nothing against Southgate.
Circumstances as well. I think.
Yeah, I agree. But I've got nothing against Southgate. I just think this is his ceiling. I don't see him progressing and going further. Than that.
Particularly we might as well get onto this now. Let me just get to a few things in the chat, and then we'll get onto it. We'll get into this in a sec. Morocco's a great story, but I just feel that I can't see Morocco beating France. I mean, I could be wrong, but
you couldn't have seen them beating Spain either.
No, this is true. Never say never, but you got to feel at some point that the train's going to run out of steam with Morocco, and I would expect
that Hakimi and Mbappe battle is going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, they're good. They're good mates. Know each other very well.
That's the only thing that makes that close, by the way, because I think if you put anyone else there, Mbappe more or less has carte blanche to do what he wants.
When it was 1-1, Game was screaming out for change like Rashford. Think he bottles decisive actions. Yeah, I mean, I would say overall in his tenure, I would agree. Yes, I would, however, say in this tournament, I think perhaps bar tonight, he has actually got most of the changes right. He's done most of the things that I would criticise him for not doing. He has actually done them, but I don't really know. I don't know what else Southgate could have really done tonight. Perhaps other than make the changes a bit sooner. I don't really see what
I know what you mean.
He could have done.
We had a good game plan. We kept Mbappe quiet for a lot of it. I mean, like we said, it's hardly 4D chess to stick your quickest player at right back to stop Mbappe. No. But I think ultimately, I think he's he made the right choices. I think there's a lot of times in this tournament where people have been slagging Southgate off.
Yeah.
Especially, for example, around his choice of Jordan Henderson before the Senegal game. and that turned out to be an absolute masterstroke.
It was, yeah.
Well, out really well. A lot of people had written Henderson off before the tournament. He's given his own career a bit of a new lease on life.
I thought tonight he was a bit poor, really. I think we could have done
he
with
wasn't
someone.
Brilliant tonight.
I think we could have done with some. And again, it's easy to say now, but I think it's one of those where no issues with him starting Henderson. But I think you could quite clearly see that, like France did with Griezmann, you could have done with a more attack-minded player.
Sticking Mount in there
in that position, maybe Mount, maybe drop Foden back in there again, as we said, a Maddison or something like that. Trent did get minutes. I think Trent came on against Wales, but Trent played about 25. I think Trent played about 20 minutes this World Cup. And
it's clear he has his favourites, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got his favourites, and he can't.
But that's also part of the reason to move him on. Give some of the other players more of a chance. Your Ivan Toney's, your Trent Alexander-Arnold.
I mean, you can't necessarily knock it per se because of how well he's done in tournaments. But when you've got a player like Trent who barely gets on the football pitch, you know full well that Trent starts for Argentina, he starts for Brazil, he starts for France, he starts for Germany, he starts for Spain.
England in midfield.
He starts for he starts for every single major nation at right back. Yeah,
I still think it was a bit of a
England, he doesn't get a look in at all.
Oh, well, I think that's because Southgate values certain players, and he values his defensive solidity, and we all know Trent's a bit suspect defensively. So you do wonder why he doesn't deploy such a creative outlook in midfield instead. At least it's something different
to make up for it.
Yeah, instead of instead of Henderson, you've got a little bit of an interesting balance to the midfield. Then you've got a creative midfielder like who would be like a creative passer like Trent. Then you've got the destroyer box to box in Bellingham, and then the DM, the lone DM in Rice. But I don't know. That sounds like a well balanced midfield for me. But I can appreciate sticking a right back at centre mid isn't for everybody.
No.
It's one of those. Like you say, I think other than little nitpicks like that, I don't think Southgate's done all that much wrong. Almost as in his entire England tenure. And then having said that, I do think this is probably where it would be best for both parties to part ways. I just don't see it going anywhere further.
I
think England need that killer instinct, and I don't think we've got it.
He's had three opportunities now, and at three separate occasions, he's not had quite what it takes to get over the finishing line. And I'm not seeing anything that would suggest in 2 years' time at the next Euros that, he'll definitely get it right. Because I think if you keep him on, you then go down sort of like the Joachim Low situation at Germany, where he should have left after the 2014 World Cup when they won. And Germany subsequently go out in the group stage of the World Cup 4 years later. The Euro 2016 campaign, I don't think was that great either. And so you have the opposite thing. And I think fresh ideas and a fresh impetus is probably what England could do with now. Southgate for me he's taken them as far as they can go. None of us expected Southgate to do this well for England. I thought at the time it was a very underwhelming appointment. It was kind of a safe pair of hands. It was a very much this
sort of like the Middlesbrough manager. All right, see what you can do.
Like a bit of a yes man to the FA. Been part of the 21 setup, knows the setup inside out, but ultimately he's done a very good job as the England manager. But I do think this should be his last game, and I know the FA wants to keep him on, but I think Gareth needs to take a long, hard look at himself and think, do you know what? I had a great crack at this.
I think he needs to have a look at what actually England need. Yeah, and he might be feeling that to certain degrees. Like what he might be thinking, what more do I have to do to get a win with these players? And maybe eventually that falls on himself. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, well, we might as well talk about it whilst we're on it. But what do you think Southgate should do? If you're Gareth Southgate, are you stepping down?
It's difficult because if what I want to do and what Southgate is thinking is might be two different things entirely. He'll probably be having a lot of conflicting feelings. He'll probably feel like to a certain degree there's like a level of like unfinished business. So maybe that'll be driving him to stay on. If I were him, I think at that point you wouldn't necessarily do anything tonight or tomorrow. You'd take a week, take two, speak to some people at the FA, figure out what you want to do. If it was up to me, he would walk with everyone's blessing. Because he's done an absolutely fantastic job. I just think this is his limit, and that's fine. Managers have their ceilings, and I think we've hit his.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, subsequently, Southgate has said that hasn't committed to taking England to the next Euros. I mean, that probably just buying himself a bit of thinking time, which I think is obviously a wise thing to do. But let's play a little bit of devil's advocate because it's fun. Presuming Southgate does step down, who would you like to see become the next England manager? Because I think the FA are in a difficult position here because the two people they would have loved to have got to replace Southgate and Eddie Howe or Graham Potter are both locked into long-term contracts at clubs and doing really good jobs and wouldn't leave it for the national team. So if you were gonna remain English, which I don't think is a necessity, you're scraping the barrel because there isn't really anyone.
Big Sam again.
There isn't really anyone. If you wanted to say British, I mean, you could look at Brendan Rodgers. I don't think he'd leave Leicester for it. You never know. But I think you're in a situation now where you've got two managers in Pochettino and Thomas Tuchel.
You don't necessarily need a high-profile choice, and Southgate's proved that.
No, that is true. But I mean, if you're the FA, and we know the FA are an archaic organisation and probably don't think like this, but surely you've got to be getting on the phone. You've got to be making contact with Thomas Tuchel's people, and you've got to be making contact with Mauricio Pochettino's people. Just to sound them out to see if these guys would actually be interested in taking the job. Because if they are, then it's an absolute no-brainer. It is an absolute no-brainer.
There's only one man
who would your choice be? Tuchel.
Tuchel, 100%. He's absolutely got the wherewithal. He's an excellent tournament manager. On his day, he is tactically undefeatable. And people might not always enjoy the football, and the dressing room spirit might decrease a little bit, but that would be worth a World Cup or a Euros. I think someone like Tuchel would tend to be a bit more ruthless as well. In who gets chosen. So I would be quite interested to see if it was Tuchel. I'd be interested to see who he picks for like friendlies and things like that to suss people out. Interesting suggestion in the comments there of Arsene Wenger, which I don't think is actually a terrible idea. Although I think he's currently working for like the FA or UEFA or something.
He's got some FIFA role as well.
FIFA, yeah. He's working for some organization at the moment, but I wouldn't be against that. He was an elite manager. The other option, of course, is if you could tap up Jose Mourinho, that would be an absolutely sensational.
It would be
pure chaos going into the next tournament. It would be absolutely fantastic.
I mean, I think the obvious choices are Tuchel or Poch, but if England is serious, if England is serious about winning tournaments, then you've got to go out and get the best that are right now. And right now there are two world-class in Tuchel, Poch, debatable world class, but
Luis Enrique,
another one in Luis Enrique. I mean, I'm not saying that Enrique is a phenomenal manager. Like, I think he should have done better with Spain or whatnot. But
be interesting to see if Van Gaal steps down as well.
He's gone.
He's gone, so you could get him as well.
No, he's gone and he's been replaced by Koeman already. I think that was already pre-agreed before the World Cup. But
he might actually be retiring because he's he
could be he's 70s and that, isn't he? But I mean, look, for me, if the FA have got any ambition, which I don't think they do, and if England is serious about winning stuff, then you simply have to get on the phone to Tuchel and get in contact with Pochettino's people and try and get one of those guys in place. It's as simple as that, because otherwise,
I think Tuchel is the obvious choice over Pochettino. I must say, just because they're two elite managers, I don't think we can hold them in equal standing, because
Tuchel's clear.
Tuchel does have that pedigree, and like we say, it was his downfall as Chelsea coach is that he couldn't really turn our form in the cup games, into consistent league results. But you don't need to do that if you're a national team manager.
No, this is it.
The best you can, the most league like it gets is the Nation League, I suppose. But I think, in my view, and like you say, the FA don't think like this, I'm sure, but I think Tuchel's a no-brainer for England. I really do.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I'm a little bit torn. I'd love him to come be England manager, but at the same time, I think he's still got so much to offer the club game. I think he's too much of a character.
I could see him going to Bayern Munich.
I think
if the Bayern manager does go.
I mean, I just think he's too big a character, too good a manager to just be seeing him in international football. I think he's got so much more to give the game. And I think, to be fair, if Germany had disposed of Flick, which they didn't, I think Tuchel could have been a shoo-in for that job as well. But
although
I mean,
apparently, from what I have seen, I think I've seen reports that say Tuchel would actually favour the England job over the Germany job.
Yeah, it's probably
don't know
more
what that says.
it's probably more attractive right now.
Yeah, I think England are probably more on the up and up, and Germany are on the way down. So if you're looking at it from like a purely like not patriotic perspective, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, let's have a look at this here. Southgate out. No, it's not Southgate out per se. It's just it's time.
No,
it's time for a change. He has done
I think
well.
yeah. I think that it's not. We're not being harsh and saying we want Southgate to go, and it's been a disgrace. We're just saying I think he's probably
it's the end of the road.
He's kind of hit his ceiling. He's kind of hit his limit, and like he's done so much to get England to where they are now. I think now what separates England, this very talented squad, from winning a trophy is probably a world-class coach.
Yeah, I would agree now, because I think it's clear that we've definitely got the players. Because for me, like, if you look at the England squad, I'm like, the squad for me is second to none in world football in terms of the depth and the quality and depth we've got. You look at I know France have got injuries tonight. No Benzema, no Giroud, no Benzema, no Nkunku, no Pogba, no Kante and whatnot, and that makes the squad a bit better. But you look what's coming off the French bench tonight compared to what's on the English bench, and it's night and day. Like England have got so much quality. The squad's phenomenal. We've seen us go close on 3 occasions now. I mean, say quarterfinals not really close, to be honest, but we've seen us go close on 2 occasions: semi-finals where we should have beaten Croatia, and that Euros where we should have won. And this group of players is definitely good enough to win a tournament. I just think I agree with you. I think there's a slight mentality issue within the group. And I think that would be partially solved with a world-class coach on the sidelines. Someone
who can just really bark at people and get, and really drill that kind of winning mentality, and that sort of, I think part of this thing I think the mentality issue is when you've got a team like, say, France or Brazil, like winning the World Cup is like a rite of passage. It's almost inevitable. Like that's the way they treat themselves at the World Cup, because they are so good. They've got and they've got the pedigree for it, and they've got a manager who's going to do the same thing.
Mate, I would almost say
England do the opposite. They go, well, we could do it, and like we will.
I don't think there's that self-belief.
It's like a hope rather than than a desire. I think there is a key difference there, and when you're talking about football, luck plays a massive factor, and then
for sure,
teeny tiny little moments
we
make such a difference.
And
literally being 1% behind, on your mentality might be the difference between winning and losing.
We talk about luck, like what happens if Eric Dyer's penalty gets saved against Colombia? We're talking fine margins. What happens if Thomas Müller scores that goal, which he probably scores every day of the week, other than the one time when it mattered in the Euros? What happens if there's
Saka scores his penalty instead?
If Saka scores his penalty in the final, if Rashford scores a penalty, these are all ifs and buts, all massive. These are all fine margins and all things that make a huge difference. We're looking at Thomas Müller scoring from England potentially being out the Euros in the last 16 or in the quarterfinals. Sorry,
and then people be calling for Southgate's head.
We're looking at one missed penalty away from going out in the last 16 against Colombia. And people are losing their shit and going, people losing their shit going mad. We're one missed penalty from winning a Euros. Again, we're a missed penalty from potentially getting to another World Cup semi-final. But the worrying thing for me is that that
consistency
is
in
not
those big moments.
Yeah, you could be unlucky in football in big moments once or twice, but
if you make a pattern out of it, then you're the problem.
And it's a pattern, like it is with England. There is a consistent pattern that every time there's a big moment, we're on the wrong side of it, and particularly and in the past, but also more noticeably under Southgate, every time we play an opposition of better quality than us, we always lose. And you look back at the tournaments, like
only Germany in the Euros is,
but they were
bad.
But to even consider that German team as a top team is wrong,
pushing
because it's pushing it. But you look at the teams we've beaten in this World Cup. We've beaten Iran, Wales, and Senegal. all poor sides. Let's be perfectly honest. Iran poor, Wales
Iran were poor. Wales,
terrible.
Wales were always going to try and turn up for the game,
and Senegal
it
did
didn't work
well
for
to
them.
get out the group, but the golfing class is so obvious. And then you go back to the Euros. Did we beat anyone of any note other than Germany, who, as we just said, are poor? No, we didn't.
And then you take that example, and then you flip it on its head, and you look at a team like Morocco, who weren't expected to get out of their group, and they weren't expecting to beat Spain. Yeah, and they topped their group, and they weren't expecting to beat Spain, and they did.
They beat Portugal as well, and they beat
Portugal
Belgium
as well.
And they also beat Belgium.
So they've slain. Say what you like about Germany, but at least Belgium and Spain, two real contenders at winning the World Cup.
Yeah,
they've slain two teams who could have easily been in the final, and the differences in that mentality is maybe it's because they're sort of like riding the wave at the moment, and because of the performances they've been given. But the difference in that mentality, then, when you look at the England squad, and there's I don't feel like tonight we played without fear.
No, he looked a bit nervy.
Yeah, and that's fine because of the occasion, but that will come back to hurt you. And just look at Kane's skied penalty.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think you look back, you can only beat what's in front of you. And yes, you have to get lucky, and you have to, it's not Southgate's fault, it's not England's fault that, the route to the path to the final, the path to whatnot, it ends up being favourable. But there's no denying that, there's multiple ways of looking at it, but are you really successful if you beat the teams you should be, and you lose against the teams that you like that are better than you? Is that a success? You're beating teams you should beat, and then you're losing against teams that are better than you. I mean,
it's hard to say, isn't it? Because we've had so many interesting performances and results at this World Cup. Japan played really well. South Korea did really well. Australia did really well. Yeah. Saudi Arabia even won against Argentina, who are still in the tournament. So there's that to a certain degree. I think England almost never make the upset. England when put up against a team like a Spain or a Belgium or a France, even a someone like a Croatia, who are an excellent team. Not necessarily, but you'd expect us to. You almost wouldn't expect us to win. Yeah, in tournament football, I know it's binary, but it's sort of that makes more sense to me. But I think then just needs to be a slight mentality change in the England camp. And for what it's worth, I don't think we're far off doing really, really well in an international tournament and taking it all the way. We got to the final in the Euros. We got to semi-finals in the previous World Cup. Like I said, we're only one missed penalty, behind going to extra time against the current world champions in the quarterfinal. It's fine margins, but I think that slight mentality difference could just give you 1.5-2% more, which just might make a difference.
I mean, it's just hard that at the moment to not look back at that Euros and just think that was the moment, because I'm not saying that England will never win something again. I'd like to think in our lifetime they will, but you just don't know. But you look at the Euros and you think England will never get a better chance of winning something. You just look at everything that the way it lined up, the route to the final, the fact that every single game bar one was at Wembley, and that was against a poor Ukraine side. Everything was for England in that moment, and you just think, well, if we couldn't do it then, when are we going to do it? And I mean, how far away do you think England are from winning a major tournament? We're not talking a million miles away, but
no, not a million miles by any extent.
There's still a little bit of a way to go for me.
I think there's a slight mentality change that's needed, and maybe a few personnel changes. Not necessarily at the managing or coach level. I mean, at the team level. I don't really ever feel comfortable watching Harry Maguire put on an England shirt, because I know he's going to do something and make some kind of bozo error, and cause us issues. He was the guy marking Giroud when Giroud scored. I think he was at fault for one of, if not both of Iran's goals. I think, in the game where we won 6-2, but he was the two, or at least one of them. Things like that, just little gaps that need to be sort of filled in the team in terms of like depth. Like I think we really needed a quality second striker option this tournament. I know they weren't going to choose Ivan Toney for current legal reasons and stuff, but I still feel like he would have been a better option than someone like Callum Wilson, who really does, as well as he's doing for Newcastle at the moment, feel like a second-rate striker. You know, when you look at France in terms of the firepower they've got up top, they've got, you know, Mbappe, who's ridiculous. Benzema, who, you know, did get injured and had to leave the tournament, I believe. But
that's a bit of a blessing for them. I actually think they're
but
better when Giroud plays. Yeah.
Benzema, world-class player, just won the Ballon d'Or like a few months ago. And then you've got Giroud, who is just who's their, you know, their top scorer, and a talisman, you know, to some degree a journeyman, but also just an elite goal scorer and poacher, and a very good target man. And when you look at what England actually have up front in terms of the striking options, it's Kane, and that's it. So if Kane isn't working, there's no second option.
And I think that's a problem. There's no plan B. There's nothing, as we touched on earlier.
And that's what I mean in terms of the personnel. I think you just need like a little bit more strength in a few certain areas.
For example, like I know Ivan Toney didn't make the squad, and that's probably because of that betting situation, which is why I don't think he made the squad. But you look at it and you think, England from the bench, you know, you could have just chucked Toney on if he was there and just lump balls into the box, like what Holland did. You know, there's for me with England, there's no plan B. It's very much, regardless of what happens, Kane's always going to stay on the pitch unless the game's won, and the subs are always going to be like for like. There's never what I would perhaps say is a risky sub. You know, it's going to be Rashford coming on. You know, it's going to be Grealish coming on. Like, there's no plan B. It's either plan A works or it doesn't work.
And the thing about the slight few sort of personnel changes, it's worth saying that we probably didn't have one of our, you know, a few of our better players actually at this World Cup. The squad's done very good with as far as I think it could have gone. You know, I don't really rate Shaw at left back all that much. I think someone like Ben Chilwell, if he was fit, would have been a better option. Although, you know, Southgate doesn't seem to like him, so maybe it wouldn't have made a difference either way. You know, obviously missing Reece James is enormous.
Yeah, it's a huge miss. Yeah,
you know that you know, and you have Ivan Toney out for different reasons as well.
But I still think, funny enough, Reece James. I still think he plays Kyle Walker. As mad as it sounds, I still think I still think Kyle Walker plays more of the games than Reece James would have done.
I think there's an interesting thing that you know, like if we're going to jump into the hypothetical, I think if you want to keep Mbappe quiet, you do a back three and you do James at wing back and then Walker at right centre back, and then between those two, Mbappe's not going anywhere.
Plus, you've got an extra man to deal with Giroud in the box as well.
Yeah, so you know, it's just a slightly different sort of setup, I suppose. You end up playing like a 3-4-3 or something like that. Yeah, that's and that's probably the way Tuchel would play if you know, with that sort of thing. So. There's I think there's, like we say, football is a game of very fine margins. Sometimes you ride your luck and sometimes you don't. And today, you know, I wouldn't have backed Kane to miss that penalty. I'm sure many people in the stadium wouldn't have backed, you know, people across the country wouldn't have backed him to miss that penalty. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's what's going on in his own head.
It's a very English thing to do, and as we said, it's a very Spursy thing to do as well.
It is a very Spursy thing.
It's a Spursy thing to do. I wouldn't say it was non-existent. I felt every time he got the ball, he was dangerous, but England did shackle him well. But I almost feel that I don't know if I think that maybe England was so focused on Mbappe. They didn't
leave Giroud free.
They didn't really think. I almost feel that actually Dembele and Theo Hernandez on that left hand side up against Shaw, that was actually more of a dangerous battle than the Walker Mbappe one was. I felt Dembele actually played pretty well. So and I wonder, you know, I
thought Walker, for what it's worth, I thought Walker did a very good job keeping Mbappe out of the game.
I mean, again, it's hindsight, but I wonder if England were perhaps slightly too fixated on Mbappe and didn't really think as much about Giroud, as much about Griezmann, as much about Dembele. I mean, only obviously people in the camp will know that, but I'm not sure if there was too much of a fixation on purely stopping Mbappe rather than, you know,
I think there was probably a lot of focus on that.
France are so much more than just Mbappe.
Yes, it's just they have Mbappe on top of everything else. You know, and like, don't get me wrong, they're an excellent team. So you know, like you say, if you pay too much attention to Mbappe on the right hand side, even if you send an extra man over to man mark him, you know, then you've got Dembele coming on the right hand side. You've got Giroud available for tap ins and headers in the middle. You know, so there's a lot of, and he's so versatile as well, Giroud. You really can score from anywhere in the box with anything, really.
Yeah, any ball into the box, is going to be a
He'll
problem.
certainly contest it at the very least. And while I think actually Harry Maguire is better for England than he is for Manchester United, I don't think that's a controversial thing to say.
He's inches away from scoring as well with that header.
Yeah, exactly. He hit the post today, and so like you said,
that free kick
margin.
from Rashford at the end is 6 inches lower. That's potentially too. We are talking fine margins. We're not talking about England being comprehensively outplayed here, but
no, and we weren't. And I think that's important to note before everyone goes into sort of the social media meltdown that I'm sure that is currently ongoing. About this or that. I think it was just a case of France took their chance as well. England not so much, and maybe that's the story of England, and maybe something needs to change around that. But for now, I'm not sure that's the most productive conversation to be having while tempers are flaring.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just briefly back to the game itself. I mean, from a Chelsea perspective, I said to you during the game, it's so painful watching Tchouaméni, knowing that we could have got him for a fraction of what he was worth, and we chose to go with Saul on loan instead. I mean, credit where credit's due. That is, I know he made a mistake when he gave away the penalty and it was rash, but that is some strike.
Yeah, he's hit it well. I do think Pickford probably could have dealt with it a bit better.
I think he could have,
especially
got a bit better
with
as well.
with the angle that it showed from where it was. The angle was almost just behind Tchouaméni when he took it, when he took that shot on. You can see that although Stones is standing in front of him, his legs are quite wide open, and I think Pickford should probably be able to see the ball from there, and he just judges it a little bit late. And I don't think Tchouaméni didn't hit it all that hard either. He nestled it in the bottom corner rather than sort of screaming it into the top. So I think, arguably, I reckon Pickford probably should do a little bit better.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I don't think it helps him that he probably sees it quite late. But
I'm not sure he does though. I think
he is. Look, it's right in the corner, and he is close to it. You just feel that. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it's a pointless thing to say, but
do you know what I think?
If he was a bit taller, he maybe gets that. I bet
do you know what?
Irrelevant because he's not. But yeah,
what I think happened is I think actually the shot caught him off guard. I think that's what happened. I think it's because when you watch the way that Tchouaméni takes that, he's almost got his back to goal a little bit, and he's outside the box, and he just turns and hits it, more or less. And so maybe he wasn't really expecting it. That would be the only thing that sort of made him hesitate for me, because I think the view for it, I think he could see it most of the way. I think he just wasn't ready for it. And he made up for it in a lot of ways in the second half. Saved a clear chance from Giroud, and kept us in the game for a lot of it. So I'm not putting any blame on him. Maybe he just could have done a bit better. That's all.
Let's do what we love to do as British fans. Let's moan about the referee. We used to having poor refereeing week in, week out in the Premier League. Thought we might get a break from it at the World Cup. Turns out we aren't. The ref was dreadful in the Holland-Argentina game last night. I thought the ref again was suspect in the Portugal-Morocco game, and I think the ref tonight was pretty poor as well again. What did you make of the ref, and what did you make of the kind of those key decisions? Let's start with Saka at foul in the build-up for the goal. We know it's kind of, can VAR go back 45 seconds or not? I'm not really sure. But yeah, just your thought on the ref in general and that first decision before we get onto the penalty that wasn't.
It's a tough one, that one, because I think it depends how, I think that one really is, you kind of have to leave it up to the discretion of the referee. We've seen fouls in this tournament that are weaker than that have been penalties. Ronaldo's one for his first goal, whenever that was in the group stages, I think it was, came to mind. That was a really, really soft penalty. So, you could say at this tournament they have been given. But at the same time, like we said, it's up to the discretion of the referee. And yeah, like fouls like that, I don't know. You can't take it back all the way, I don't think.
No, you've got to give that straight away or not.
Yeah, so it's just one of them. I think you feel a bit aggrieved if it goes against you, but
I don't think it's. I don't think it's a. It probably is a foul, but I don't think it's like a stone wall foul, as it were. I don't think it's like blatantly obvious that that is
No, I think
100% a foul. I think
Saka
you
really
see
got
those.
the
Yeah,
shit kicked out of him later
he
in the
did.
game, and
Yeah,
there were some which were blatant fouls that the ref just did not call
yeah,
at
yeah.
all.
I mean,
You know, so
let's go to perhaps England did get 2 penalties, but let's go to probably the one that they didn't get. Obviously, Kane gets the better of Upamecano. He gets goals. He gets Upamecano's wrong side of him. He commits the foul. VAR have obviously decided that it's not in the box. So I don't know what the laws of the game are now. Is it from where the contact starts? Is it where the contact finishes? Because it's clear that the contact starts outside the box. And obviously the line counts as the box, but the contact definitely starts outside the box. And for me, if that's the case, if that's the rules, then that isn't a penalty, but it's 100% a foul. But obviously we know that VAR retrospectively can't go back and award free kicks. It can only go back and award a penalty. So do you think ultimately that's just outside the box and it's not a penalty?
It's a really tough one. I think it's one of them. If it's in the box, it's definitely a penalty, and if it's not, then it's nothing because VAR doesn't go back and retrospectively do it.
I think that's for me. That's the only conclusion that I can come to as to why.
Again,
that wasn't
it's fine
given.
margins, you know, a couple inches one way or the other, and you're talking about whether something's definitely in or out. But it's just one of those.
Yeah, I would agree. And in terms of the one on Bellingham as well, he was incensed that he didn't get one for being bundled over in the box. I think probably that one wasn't a penalty, but you kind of you look at France and a team that are world champions. They're full of quality despite missing some key players, and you look at you talk about decision making. You've just gone 2-1 up in a World Cup quarter final. There's less than 10 minutes left. As a professional footballer, as Teo Hernandez, what are you doing? When what, but what? I'm not saying that ultimately it didn't matter, but like your thought process as a player, I know like it's easy for me to sit here and say that, but like your team's just gone 2-1 up, you're in control of a difficult game. Why on earth is he just got no eyes on the ball and just shoving Mason Mount over in the box? It is the most stupid thing you could possibly do.
I mean, it was just the way he crashes into him is really poor. Maybe just the occasion just got a little bit much for him. Mount, as we know, has excellent positional play, just gets in the right place at the right time, and does draw the foul. Even eventually after VAR retrospectively told the ref to go have a look at it, which you could argue again is another issue with the ref today. It's I think ultimately it's all kind of moot because Kane missed it, but it could, on a different day, it's a different result.
I mean, Rabiot's been speaking after the game.
No!
He said it was justice. Harry Kane missed this second penalty kick against France because there was no way England should have received the decision. First of all, I'm not sure that it's really a foul. We've seen hundreds of actions like that aren't given. I was like, well,
I think the difference is if that happens on the halfway line, it probably is given as a foul. And I think there's a slight difference between the way it happens, because in some of those in the box and the player goes down, what happens is they feel a little nudge and they go down,
or they
get a little bit of a push.
Yeah.
They get a bit of a push and
this is a full-on shoulder barge.
They get sent off balance. Mason Mount's been like body checked in the spine. So it is a little bit different. I think that, and the other thing as well there is I think the fact that he's not looking at the ball at all when he does that is another issue. Think he's not trying to win the ball in any way there.
No. Do you think that's a red card? Because you see England players were looking to get him sent off, whether they actually thought it was a red or not. They're probably just looking to do whatever they can to get an advantage. I don't know if that falls under
double jeopardy or not. I'm not.
That's what I'm thinking as well. If you've given a pen, then I always look at it as it's one or the other. And is that ultimately for me? Is that denying a clear goal scoring opportunity?
I would say no.
I'd say no
because Mount doesn't have the ball. And I think
got it under control.
I think that's what Peter Walton, sort of like the referee expert, who, explains the decision, said as well, is it's not a red card because Mount isn't in control of the ball. When it's fair enough, it is a foul. It's just an off the ball one.
Yeah, I would agree. We'll talk about this missed penalty before we get on to Giroud quickly. It's hard to put blame on a player for missing a penalty because it can happen to anyone. The best players in the world miss penalties, but
Messi's missed one this tournament.
Yeah, but when you're, and I've got no way of quantifying this, but I've just got a feeling that, someone like, for me, Messi doesn't miss that penalty. Mbappe doesn't miss that penalty. I don't think Cristiano Ronaldo misses that penalty.
Coutinho doesn't miss it.
I think, admittedly, he did miss one in the Euros final as well. But what I'm saying is that I honestly think that the best players in the world don't miss that penalty.
Drogba doesn't miss that penalty. No, not for a second.
And again, I've got no tangible way of quantifying that claim.
No, it's just about whether somebody's got ice in their veins or not.
For example, and Harry Kane's not this sort of player, but you would never see him attempt a Panenka, for example, on that.
No,
penalty.
Like Hakimi did
that's ballsy. Harry Kane's not got balls like that. He tends to go for the sort of the Shearer type of thing. He's one of those.
Yeah, if you hit it as hard as you possibly can and get it on target,
as you can,
it will probably go in.
Whereas I think there's perhaps a bit more to be said for just being a bit more ballsy. I know you might look pretty stupid if you do a Panenka and the keeper just stands there. But let's be honest, Lloris, I'm not saying that Kane should have done a Panenka, but that's the last thing that Lloris would have been expecting. I just think for me, Kane, look, no doubt is a top footballer, but he's won nothing. This was to go clear as England's all-time leading goal scorer. He's still tied with Rooney. I have to wait a little bit longer.
He's literally bottled it in more than one way.
He's
personally,
bottled it
from multiple different directions.
I don't want to say that it's like laid blame solely at his door for why England have gone out. That's not the case, because we could have easily let another goal in, or we could have lost on extra time, could have lost on penalties. But ultimately,
could have scored as well, could have won the game.
But ultimately, this is the key moment of the game, and I don't think it matters how you dress it up. He's bottled that. He's let the situation get the better of him. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to let happen, because that is an easy thing to let happen given the context of the situation. But
there's a lot of pressure. It's 5 minutes to go. It's a World Cup quarterfinal against the world champions, and he's already taken a penalty. So
do you think that's? I mean, I was speaking to a few mates of mine that were thinking that because he's already taken one, they should have given that penalty to someone else.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you agree with that? I mean, I don't think that would have ever. I don't think there was for a second that would have happened. But do you think there's a case to be made for that?
I think it should have happened. It never was going to happen because Kane wanted to break the record, obviously. I think if in that kind of situation, I'm not fully convinced that. I think Kane kind of felt like he had to take it. And that's not a situation you want to be in. You need someone to be saying, I want the ball, give me the ball. Like a bit almost like Rashford did actually at the end of that free kick, where he just picked the ball up and he was like, this is me, I'm doing this. And it didn't work out for him either, but a free kick's a bit different. I almost would have said to give that, it would have been smart for Kane to do the thing where he holds the ball, look like he's going to take the penalty, and then maybe just hand it to Rashford and let him have a go. Someone with ice in their veins, I think when, you don't know what's going on in his head at that moment, but I think there's the extra added pressure of, well, I went one way this time, so do I need to go the other way?
Well, he went, ironically, he went the same way.
Yeah.
He just smashed it miles over. I mean, look, it's easy to sit here, and I'm not going to sit here and criticize him, because until you've been in that situation yourself, you can't say. But
it's an unimaginable amount of pressure, I mean,
and
it's all hindsight as well. If he smashes that and it bounces in off the bar a few inches lower, we all go, oh wow, what an amazing penalty.
But for me, as I said at the top of the show, you just have to hit the target as a bare minimum.
You really do.
I think as a professional, it's inexcusable to miss the goal completely.
That's literally just
my
the
opinion.
goalie. Yeah. I know there's all the psychological tricks people use now, the goalies use now and the teams, and the goalies are really good at getting off their lines quickly and really going well to dive to one side. But ultimately, you really do have at least a 2/3 chance. If you're thinking left, right, middle, right, you've got a 2/3 chance of it going in if you just pick one. And you're on target, of course. That's the key thing. You need to be getting it on target. Otherwise, you've got no chance. You go from a 2/3 chance to zero.
Yeah. I mean, let's round out with two quick things. I want to quickly touch on Olivier Giroud. I think, again, painful from a Chelsea perspective, because he'd still be starting for us now if we kept him.
I think and scoring goals.
I honestly think he would be. So to go along with a Tchouameni shit show, a decision from the club, also to let Olivier Giroud go for €1 million was up there again with another poor piece of decision making. But you know,
can we get like a GoFundMe together and buy him back? It's only €1 million.
Honestly, I'm convinced. I don't even need to be convinced. It's just facts. He'd be starting for us now, and he'd be our best centre forward.
Yeah, he would have scored the most goals by far.
Simple as that. I mean, we sold Giroud for $1 million and spent $100 million on Lukaku, and that's
we all know how that ended.
That's where we're at. But mate, just briefly on him. To be honest, might not have even been playing that much if Benzema had been fit. But this guy now, France's all-time leading goal scorer. I think he's got 4 goals at the World Cup, 1 behind Mbappe. 36 years of age, still going strong. I think so underappreciated. And what a player.
He aged like a fine wine as well. I remember when he was a bit younger at Arsenal, a lot of people would say he's quite wasteful and that he wasn't quite as good as he is now. He has only gotten better as he's gotten older. You know, certainly at Chelsea, at AC Milan, he's doing wonderful things. And with France, he's absolutely unstoppable because he's just one of the he's the perfect centre forward. You know, the perfect classic number 9 for a game. You know, for a tournament football, which is a little bit more simple and how people tend to cross the ball in terms of the more tiki-taka and passing moves. And he's just such a good outlet to have as well. And like I said, he's only gotten better with age. He's only gotten better.
Yeah, I really do think he's.
If him and Benzema weren't so similar in the type of players they were, he'd probably have like 30, 40 more goals for France. Easily.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But then you could also, I guess, you could flip it the other way around.
Then Benzema was out of the squad for a while.
If Benzema wasn't out of the squad for the reasons he was, then does Giroud get anywhere near that record? Does he play as many games? But ultimately, these are all ifs and buts, and he's done the business. He's France's all-time top goal scorer, and
a handsome man to boot. He's winning in all aspects.
Mate, he's ticking all boxes in life. He is winning at life. Just to round out, mate. We kind of have touched on it slightly, but how would you sum up this World Cup for England, just briefly? I mean, ultimately, we've gone out in the quarterfinals. We've beaten 3 teams in Wales, Iran, and Senegal, which we obviously should have beaten. We lost against a team that was better than us. Kind of a fairly standard England situation in tournaments. But you look back at this World Cup, and I know it's still very fresh in the mind, but do you view this as a successful tournament in the immediate aftermath?
I do, and mainly because of a few factors. I don't know if you remember our predictions video where I actually said that I wasn't sure if England would get out of the group.
Yeah, I think we both said that. I mean, I did put them through, but I was worried we might not get out.
But it was a really, so part of that, and because of how poor we were in the run up to the tournament, especially losing in the way we did to Hungary before the tournament began, there was a real feeling for me. I was feeling very dejected about England's chances. And with each performance that we put in, it got a little bit better and a little bit better, sort of USA aside. It got better and better and better. And I would say, ultimately, the World Cup, it's come for England's World Cup, I would say, has been a pretty standard one with some really nice moments, that we can all nicely remember. Saka's goal, I think it's the one against Iran, comes to mind.
The first one was good, yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of things we can take home from this World Cup, and I think the players should be proud as well. Like I said before, I don't think they're too far off actually being consistent challengers for international tournaments. The key thing now is to make sure that the right decisions are made, because we've seen now on several teams, you could argue Belgium's won, but Germany's definitely won. If you're not going to make the right decisions, it's how easy it is for a very good generation of players to pass through without winning anything at all. Yeah. And Belgium are the most understanding, I'm sure, of that situation. And that's also kind of part of the reason I think it would be a good idea as well for us just a change in pace in terms of the coach. I really rate Southgate for everything he's done for England as a coach. He's done something which he's brought together a group of players in a way that England just haven't been like for a really long time. and that's really important. He's almost like fixed the culture at England in terms of like having these really sort of everyone knows the famous stories of how like Ferdinand and Terry and Scholes and Gerrard and Lampard all didn't really get on because they were all so focused on their club football. Now we've got a group of lads who are all mates, and that really does matter because it means that they're gonna fight for one another and they're gonna be a good team. And so Southgate's fixed that, and I'm really happy that he's done that because I think that was really needed. But I think in terms of him stylistically, tactically, I think he's hit his ceiling, and I think it would be a good time for off of a reasonably positive World Cup, but maybe slightly underwhelming, for him to part ways at this stage.
Yeah, I think that's summed up perfectly. I think it's, again, like so often with England in tournaments, left with a major case of what if, because you win this game. Morocco are fully in the semi-finals on merit, but you'd be thinking, you'd be licking your lips at a Morocco semi-final. Like,
I'm sure France are.
Yeah, you bite your hand off for it, and you just think England is like so close, but still quite far away in that context. This for me was a bigger game than the Euros final. I know that sounds a bit stupid, but you're like,
I know what you mean. If we had won this one, there would have been a real chance.
You almost feel like there's no givens in football, but you almost feel like the winner of this is almost a net World Cup final spot. Like no disrespect to
depends
Morocco,
what you could do against Argentina, maybe, but because you can never rule Messi out. No, but it did. I think a lot of people felt that way. I think a lot of people will sort of take whoever won from this, in this case France, and back them to win it now, because they've probably had one of the tougher goes of it through the World Cup. And it's interesting because there are a lot of teams that have gotten some really good performances and some better teams that haven't played so well. France obviously, once they'd qualified, they lost to Tunisia.
Yeah, made 9 changes to shut that game.
And Argentina obviously struggled as well. Like you said earlier, Croatia haven't won. They've only won one game in 90, regular. Yeah, one game in 90. So on form, you actually you might want to put Morocco through. But I think ultimately it'll be. I'm now expecting a France-Argentina final.
Yeah, I still think that's pretty good. Mbappe, Messi, I think that's...
Yeah, that would be... It's almost like be an interesting one. You sort of passing of the torch, or is it one last dance for Messi? It's a good story.
I'm still disappointed. I've got to be honest, I'm still gutted that we're not going to get a Messi-Ronaldo final. I honestly thought...
I was gutted from that as well.
I honestly thought it could have been shaping up for a Messi-Ronaldo final.
One last dance. How good would that have been?
That would have been so good.
Unfortunately, football writers, they knew they couldn't write it without scripting it.
It would have broken the internet as well. The Twitter would have been an absolute meltdown.
Quagmire. It would have been horrendous. It would have been the equivalent of like a nuclear war zone. It would have been
last point, just around that, what I would say is that I know the likes of Croatia and Morocco are fully there on merit and they deserve to be there. But I just look at it from now that England are out and just looking at it from a neutral perspective, I almost feel a slight sense of disappointment that we haven't got France versus Portugal and we don't have Brazil versus Argentina. And that's no disrespect to the likes of Morocco or Croatia, but from a spectacle, I just think it slightly lessens the spectacle of a World Cup semi-final where you've got 2 games that aren't that great. I mean, they could turn out to be good games, but when you look at it at face value, the like Morocco versus France and Argentina, Croatia, it's no Argentina, Brazil, and it's no France, Portugal. I almost feel like almost a bit disappointed.
They're on merit, aren't they?
They are.
And I think we're only gonna get more of this when the World Cup expands to more teams next time out.
That, by the way, is a massive mistake as well.
Do you reckon?
You're going to go to groups of 3, and you're going to just dilute the World Cup with a load more shit teams.
Maybe, but there's also the chance for more Cinderella stories, which is kind of what the World Cup is all about.
Of course. But I just feel you run the risk of making the World Cup
like the
Olympics, where it just seems to be mass participation rather
than what you mean.
Rather than being there on merit.
That's not that shy off of like
that's almost
a quarter of all teams. So it's a little bit less.
I think it sanitizes the product.
Yeah, maybe. But ultimately, I think it's also about the saleability of the World Cup. More countries going means more sales, means more tickets, means
Yeah,
more
yeah,
fans, means
yeah.
merchandise, all of that. So
No, I
I
don't
think it's
disagree
always
with
going to
that. Yeah,
follow the money. Um, to a lesser degree, you could almost see it as the finals are taking one sort of step down into slightly into the qualifiers a little bit.
yeah,
Instead of but I think some places do deserve it as well. Like I think we need to see a lot more African teams in the World Cup because we've
yeah, yeah.
seen from Morocco, Ghana in this World Cup what they can do. And it'd be interesting to see, next time if you've got Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, like I think now that Morocco have gotten through to the World Cup, I think Africa now get 11 spots
Yeah, there
in
could
the
be an
next
extra.
World
Yeah,
Cup. So that there's a really good opportunity there to see some like emerging talent as well. It's all part of it. Yeah, I know what you mean to a certain degree. It does dilute and sanitize the product a lot. But I suppose change isn't always good, but at least it's change.
yeah, yeah. I suppose so. But yeah, seems like a good point to round out. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for getting involved in the chat. Appreciate it as always. Ollie, thanks for your time, mate. Pleasure as always. Guys, before you leave, please make sure you smash the likes on the stream and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Please make sure you also follow Ollie on Twitter, linked in the description. So please head to his profile, give him a follow. Some great stuff on there. From myself, I'll be back tomorrow because Chelsea are back in action. Friendly against Aston Villa out in Abu Dhabi. Plenty more
You
to be
all
cheerful
forgot.
about.
We've got to
Plenty
get back
more.
to Chelsea now.
Yeah, plenty more to be cheerful about. Chelsea back in action tomorrow. I will be doing something to do with the game, not decided yet, but please do come back and check that out. But ultimately for England, same story as always, just falling up short. But hopefully we'll be back in a couple of years' time. But guys, take care, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and catch you again soon.